Lesson 4 is our lesson on the process called capacity management, and it has 4 objectives. First, we'll learn about the main objectives of capacity management. Next, we'll learn about the 3 sub-processes of capacity management, as well as the capacity plan. And we'll finish up this short lesson with a quick word about how capacity management interfaces with demand management. If you remember nothing else about capacity management, remember these 2 points. First, remember that capacity management ensures that cost-justifiable IT capacity always exists in all areas of IT. That phrase, cost-justifiable IT capacity, is emphasized on this slide, so it's important to remember that phrase for the exam and that it's related to capacity management. Next, remember that capacity management's job is to take data that it got from demand management back in service strategy and then match the current business requirements and the future requirements to IT's capabilities and capacity. Pretend that this is our trusty network bandwidth utilization chart. We saw a similar chart in the demand management lesson back in service strategy. So this here is option 1 for the amount of bandwidth you can buy from a circuit provider, and this is option 2, which gets you more bandwidth, but it also costs more. So let's pretend that this is a 1-month snapshot of what your bandwidth utilization pattern looks like after 1 month. As we established back in service strategy during demand management, option 1 is the best bandwidth option for you to purchase because option 2 would be wasteful. Why spend all that money on option 2 when option 1 gives you a lot of room for growth and it handles the peaks just fine? But now, let's pretend that this is what your bandwidth utilization looks like. Now which is the right option to purchase? Some might say definitely option 2 because there are times when we are clearly exceeding the option 1 limit. Others might say definitely option 1 because we're only exceeding the option 1 limit just a few times a month. The truth is that we can't really answer this question without doing some digging, and that's largely what capacity management is about. We need to ask ourselves, what are these spikes? If these spikes are the backups happening on the weekends, maybe we can run our backups in a different pattern so we can stay under the option 1 limit. Or maybe these spikes are people visiting YouTube at lunchtime every day, and maybe we should consider restricting access to that site. So we might be able to get away with staying with option 1 after we make some adjustments. But what if these spikes are for month-end processing and we can't do anything to change this demand pattern? Then maybe it's time for option 2. But we can't make the decision just yet, because another question we need to ask is, how much is our circuit provider charging us for each time we go over the option 1 limit? If they're not charging you very much for these extra bursts, you can stay with option 1. But if they're gouging you, then you might be better off with option 2. I can give you another analogy. I have a 700-minute cell phone plan, and as soon as I use my 701st minute, my costs skyrocket. During months when I'm doing a lot of traveling and relying on my cell phone a lot, I'll up my cell phone plan to the 1400-minute package because it actually winds up costing less. I can't change plans after the fact. I have to do it proactively before I leave on my business trip. So this requires me not only to think ahead, but to understand and predict what my demand for the cell phone service is going to be, so then I can ensure that I purchase the cost-justifiable capacity to meet my demand. So here again you can see another example of how demand management and capacity management go hand in hand. The main objectives of capacity management are to produce and maintain a capacity plan, which is a document that outlines your current capacity usage as well as what you're expecting to need over the next period. Also, providing advice and guidance to both the business and IT on all capacity-related issues. Next, we ensure that our service performance achievements meet or even exceed all of the targets that we promised in our SLA. Next, if there are any capacity-related issues, someone with a capacity management hat on will assist with the diagnosis and the resolution. Also, someone with a capacity management hat will also review any changes to make sure that they won't negatively impact our current or our future capacity. And lastly, where it makes sense from a time and cost perspective, we can proactively improve the performance of services. This diagram shows a high-level overview of the working parts of capacity management, and there are some exam-related morsels on this slide, so let's take a look. First, we know that capacity management gets its input from demand management, since demand management is the proactive piece that tells IT what the patterns of business activity are today and what they're expected to be in the future. With this demand data, we then have three sub-processes to capacity management. First, we have business capacity management, which simply makes sure that we understand what the future business requirements for capacity are. Then we have service capacity management, which helps us determine how our IT services are using capacity. Lastly, we have component capacity management, which identifies and understands the capacity of individual IT components. So these three things are hierarchical. We use IT components, like servers and data circuits, to make our IT services go. And we use our IT services to make our business go. So you can think of these as being the biggest, medium, and smallest. For the exam, you'll need to be able to rattle off these three processes of capacity management, which again are business capacity management, service capacity management, and component capacity management. Solid capacity management relies on a tool to compile and store all capacity-related data called the CMIS, or the Capacity Management Information System. In real life, this is probably not one database, but probably more like an interface that can pull data from the various sources that store capacity data. The CMIS stores, or at least needs to be able to crunch, four different types of data: business data, service data, component utilization data, and financial data. The first three make some sense because they align with business data, service data, and component utilization data. But it also needs to be able to store financial data because capacity management is all about providing cost-justifiable IT capacity. So we need this financial data to crunch along with this techie data so we can get a full and accurate picture of our capacity. For the exam, you'll also need to remember that the CMIS, the Capacity Management Information System, stores these types of data. Another output of the capacity management process is a capacity plan. This document is typically written annually, though it can be modified at any time. The capacity plan needs to have a snapshot of our utilization levels today, as well as what we're expecting to need in the future. This way we can see how far we need to go to fill the expected capacity gap. Our capacity management lesson wraps up with a list of folks who do capacity management. First, you'll have a person filling the role of capacity management process owner, and their job is to do all the DEMI stuff that every process owner does. If you need a list of the process owner's duties as it relates to capacity management, just check the book that came with this DVD. In addition to the process owner duties, the person in this role is also responsible for proactive capacity-related planning and for publishing that in the annual capacity plan. Other people get involved in capacity management too. We have our service level manager, whose job it is to negotiate, and there's that service level management word again, they negotiate the capacity requirements with our existing customers. Also, various business managers, meaning people on the business side, are going to provide their demand patterns so we can plan our capacity accordingly. And then we have people in the technical management and the application management functions. They do the day-to-day capacity-related activities. So a server admin falls into the generic idle lump function called technical management, and a server admin has the day-to-day responsibility of making sure that his servers have enough disk space. Or you may have a resource dedicated to babysitting your PeopleSoft application, and that person is lumped into the generic idle function called application management, and she'll do the capacity-related activities to make sure that the application can handle a certain number of records, for example. Chances are you won't have a single person with capacity manager written on their business card. Instead, it's a process whose duties are typically shared among many teams. And this roles slide wraps up our capacity management lesson. Let's move on to lesson number 5, called Availability Management.